Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Economist Impact Second Annual Croatia Summit. Dobar dan, dame I gospodo, dobrodošli na konferenciju. Welcome, Prime Minister. My name's Joan Hoey. I'm the editor of the Economist Annual Democracy Index, and I'm a Europe consultant at the Economist Intelligence Unit, and I'm your moderator for the day. Before we get the proceedings underway, I'd like to thank all our sponsors and supporters, without whom this event would not be possible. You can see them all on the screen behind you. We very much appreciate your support. Thank you very much indeed. The event's also been organized in collaboration with the European Commission, supported by the Croatian Chamber of Economy and by AmCham, and thanks, of course, to the input from the government, greatly appreciated. We'd like to give a special thanks to Domagoj Juricic for his invaluable help, together with MKPS, and thanks also to MSS Pulse. Now, before I invite the Prime Minister to join me on stage for the official opening session, I just wanted to show you a few slides to help frame the discussions that we're going to have today. I don't want to take time away from the Prime Minister, so I'm going to present these slides very quickly, so you might want to take photos of them. There's 5 slides, and I'm only going to spend a few minutes on them. So we've got the first one now on screen. I think maybe as a framework for our discussions, it's useful to think about the 3 major shifts that are reshaping the global order and also the outlook for our regions. First of all, of course, a theme very familiar to all of you, AI and the technology and digital revolution more broadly, which has the potential to spur growth, but is also creating quite a lot of uncertainty and may, in time, create significant disruption as well. Second, we've entered an era, obviously, of increasing great power rivalry and competition, and that is reshaping alliances, generating tensions and conflict of different sorts, and a new competition for spheres of influence. And third, we're seeing how those 2 shifts are politicizing and even weaponizing policy in many areas, from trade to tech wars and so on. Now, I think as a consequence, for economists, the job of forecasting has got a lot harder. We see tailwinds, crosswinds, headwinds, all having countervailing influences on the global outlook, and you can see some of them mentioned here. So on the one hand, we have these tailwinds, such as this huge AI investment boom that is boosting capital expenditure and equity markets and really encouraging growth, especially in the US, where the economy has been much more resilient than many would have thought. We have crosswinds, such as the unexpected consequence, maybe, of the tariff wars, which is spurring new trade alliances, new free trade agreements, and so on, rerouting supply chains. And then we have headwinds, including, for example, a slowdown in growth and deflation in China, which is slowing investment and consumption, despite the official growth targets. That's just a few of these kind of countervailing trends which are shaping the global outlook. The upshot of all this is heightened uncertainty, global uncertainty, which historically, as we know, has not been good for growth. But I think things are a lot less uncertain now at the end of the year than they were at the beginning of the year. And so far the impact of the AI tech transformation has been much more positive than negative. Tariffs have been less of a drag on growth than many had expected, and that's because what we saw was a huge front-loading of trade, especially in the first half of 2025. So we're not seeing the kind of negative impact on trade. Certainly we're seeing shifts in trade, and we see the service economy doing very well in many places. So yeah, less uncertainty, I think, and a kind of some unexpected maybe upsides. This is just giving you a quick snapshot of the global economic outlook for 2026, where we see GDP growth still being quite lackluster, as in 2025, with emerging markets faring better than developed markets. The color coding on this chart shows the countries that are experiencing the most anemic growth or weak growth are shown in purple and dark blue, and the fastest growing economies are shown in red, orange, not many of those, yellow and green. And just Europe, this is what Europe is looking like in terms of the growth outlook in 2026. And what we see here, as we've done for several years, is the better performing economies are in Eastern Europe and Southern Europe, and that includes Croatia. And that, yeah, as I say, that's been the case for several years now, and we expect that to continue. So that's just a very, very quick, I'd like to spend more time, but as I say, don't want to take time away from the conversation with the Prime Minister, which I know you're all very much looking forward to. So I'd like to invite now the Prime Minister of Croatia, Andrej Plenković, to join me on the stage to discuss his government's priorities in economic and social policy, defense, security, and regional cooperation. Welcome, Prime Minister. So, I thought we should start certainly with Croatia and then broaden out to the region and Europe and the world if we have time. So we're almost halfway through your third term as Prime Minister. So I just wanted to ask you, and that started in April, after the election in April last year, what are your priorities now for the second half of your term?
Thank you very much, Joanne. Congratulations for the second edition of this Economist conference in Croatia. Greetings to all the people from government, parliament, business, academia, media circles. It's great to be here with you. As you put it rightly, we are almost there. The half of this third mandate is happening sometime in May next year, but I would say that the intensity of activities is, first of all, the continuation of our policy that we have tried to persistently pursue over the past 9 years, and that is the policy of a simple and easy message that is to catch up with other countries that joined the European Union before us. So the catching up is still the main mode of operation of the Croatian government, and I have to admit that now it's gaining to show results. Croatia, which was at the level of 61-62 ratio GDP per capita in terms of average of the EU, will end this year with 78%. Our GDP compared to 2016 to end of 25 will actually double. It's supposed to end up around 92-93 billion euros. GDP per capita basically continuously growing. It's more than double now than it was 9 years ago. And the priorities are very much stemming from the national development strategy as well as the government program, which is clear. The issue number one for the survival of Croats as a nation is demography. This time we have allocated more money than ever. More than 800 million euros will be, I'm sure, adopted on Friday when the Croatian parliament will adopt the new budget for 2026. Another element is, of course, to continue with the energy transition towards the renewables. And the third priority is further efforts in the digitalization. What is important for us is to continue investment in education. Education is today where the defense and defense-related expenditures and investments should be in 2035. Actually, here's the Ministry of Science and education, and we spend 5% of our GDP on education. For smaller nations, this is essential. Unless we invest into education, we won't be competitive, or our people will not have the same chances at the labor markets, whether they're domestic, European, or global. So these are the priorities. In terms of employment, and that is perhaps sometimes the most important indicator, Croatia has never had more people working. Even now, when we are off the most intense months of the tourist season, Croatia is at the level of 1,750,000 people working. The unemployment is now a natural unemployment, basically between 4 and 5%, around 75,000 people. So those who are not really a little bit agile or I would say active in trying to find a job are not working, but that's the usual assistana concept that is, I would say, imminent to many other countries.
Thanks for that. Well, I think looking at the data, and we look at the data at EIU and looking over the kind of taking the kind of long view. Obviously, the past few years have been very impressive in terms of the turnaround, the economic turnaround. So Croatia's been performing very well, as you say, in terms of growth of GDP, employment, wages, pensions, and so on. And I don't think anybody, would dispute that it's come a long way after that period, after the global financial crisis, where it was at quite a low level. So there's been considerable catch-up. I don't know if you saw, there was a new Ipsos knowledge panel survey for looking at 9 countries in detail at attitudes towards government and more broadly democracy. And the results for Croatia were quite interesting because it was looking at satisfaction with democracy. And in Croatia, one thing that really stood out was the degree to which the population supported democracy to the degree that it was delivering improvements in living standards and quality of life. And I guess there's still a section of the population that feels that they could be doing better than they are, despite all the progress. And I just wanted to ask, why do you think that is? We see it in other countries too. Greece, for example, also doing well, but we see this underlying dissatisfaction. Is that because it's starting from a low base? Is it because too many shocks, pandemic, and then the war in Ukraine and so on? Is it because food prices are still high and driving inflation? Is it all those things?
Well, if you look at the average, I have to admit I haven't seen this survey, but
Yeah.
I'll ask my colleagues to send it to me, and then I will read it on the plane to Turin later on today. But what I can sense, and everybody else who is Croatian here around the table, you have sort of perennial expectations of the Croats that they will eventually live better. Since we were all born, basically, nobody's ever happy, and we are always grumbling that things should be better and more efficient, and they should have higher wages, and services that the state or other institutions provide should be at a higher level. And what we are doing, and everybody else before us, was trying to improve things. Whether people are sufficiently happy or not, if you look at the surveys that the Croatian pollsters do, I'm always amazed with the question, are we going in the right direction? 75% believe that we are going in a completely wrong direction. So whatever this poll that you mentioned said is probably aligned with this most silliest question, because I always ask the counter question, what should be the other direction? Where should we go? If it's not deeper EU integration, if it's not Eurozone, Schengen, OECD, growth, higher employment, better wages, better pensions, infrastructure investments, balanced regional development, equal chances, more attractive, I would say, investment climate for foreign investors to come. I don't know where else we should go. So I'm taking note of all the surveys, but given the context in which we operate, and you barely see, I would say, a neutral article or a commentary in the Croatian media. You see predominantly negative comments, but that's the way it is. But people now sort of are also immune a little bit to that.
Well, I guess it's good that in general people have the aspiration, always to be...
It's very legitimate, and I support it.
To be doing better, and yeah.
I share that view.
More is never enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a bit on the politics, both in Croatia and more broadly in Europe. Your governments are widely seen in Europe to have been very pro-EU. Obviously, you joined the Eurozone and Schengen 2 years ago. Pro-EU, very liberal in orientation. But in Europe and in Croatia, some see that there's been a shift since last year, since the election, when the Homeland Movement was included in the government as well as a minority party. Some people see that maybe there's been a shift to the right, including on issues of migration and minority rights and so on. So in that sense, is Croatia kind of moving in line with many other countries in Europe where we see this general shift to the right, obviously rise in populist movements? Is that, has there been a shift in the political mood in Croatia? Is that something that you would agree with or not?
No. I will simply explain for the audience what happened, because people tend to forget what happens. Basically, we had the 2024 elections where we had the sort of abrupt invasion into the parliamentary electoral process by the president, which was an unconstitutional thing. Then you had the creation of a total catastrophe, chaos, crisis and everything, and a huge turnout at the election. So let's say instead of winning my party and my list between, let's say, 63 and 66 MPs, we got 61. Then you had a huge pressure of the left political parties and those who were thinking whether they will go into a coalition with us or not. They frightened them, like, wow, boo, you shouldn't go into the coalition with the government that has taken so many good things about Croatia, but they're HDZ and they should be the untouchables. So we basically had a choice of trying to talk to some of the parties of the liberal center. Some of them are with us. Others were a little bit afraid how their voters will react at the European elections, which were coming literally 6 weeks later, because they had one seat in the European Parliament, and they thought if they go with us that they may lose it. So the choice which was in front of me as a leader was, first of all, as a convincing relative winner, to continue. For me, it would have been a bigger defeat to let the relative losers to form a government. That's what happened to Juncker in 2014. I don't like that system. So I had to talk with those who wanted to go with us, and we formed a government. The 5 MPs from minorities are with us. The one that the Homeland Party didn't want to be in the coalition was the Serbian members of the parliament, but basically nothing changed in terms of their rights, in terms of the financing of the projects, constant political consultations that we have. And I would say, except the fact they're not sitting at the table of the parliamentary majority and sometimes voting against, sometimes in favor, sometimes abstaining, not much has changed. Certainly not the portrayal of the left-leaning commentators who will say that something has changed. Nothing has changed. The direction of the country is exactly the same. But we had to work with those who wanted to work with us. And may I just note, those who were afraid of going into the coalition with HDZ lost the seat in the European Parliament. And then I deliberately went to head the list of the HDZ, and we won 6 out of 12 seats in the list of the Croatian MEP, so 50%, so even more convincing victory. And basically they lost ground wherever they went. They didn't gain anything. So that was a strategic political mistake of some of the parties who are, let's say, a little bit more left-center-right than the center-right. But nothing has changed. This is a nonsense commentary, in my view.
Thanks for that. I want to move on to kind of some more regional and Europe-wide issues as well. But just first of all, just on the migration issue, I mean, is that an issue for Croatia? Obviously, Croatia's on this Western Balkan route. You have very long border with Bosnia-Herzegovina, and policing that border has obviously become more important since Croatia joined Schengen. Does this new EU migration pact put more demands on Croatia? What's the...
We are on the Eastern Mediterranean, Western Balkans migration route, but compared to 10 years ago, it's a low-intensity route. We have around 7,000 policemen guarding the border between Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, where the natural borders are not there, meaning the river of Sava are very high. mountains which are difficult to cross even for the smugglers trying to bring into Croatia as an EU and Schengen member and then go on more to the west, the people who are looking for a better future. I think we have not completely stopped the illegal migration, but made it very, very scarce. And the data, even by the Slovenians, the Austrians, or Italians, demonstrate that much fewer people manage to cross illegally our borders. We have two issues: the illegal migration, which we are stopping by the legal means at our disposal and the cooperation with other countries. The second is the legal migration, the foreign workers. We now are resorting to the assistance in our labor market of around 150,000 people who are non-Croats, 115, 20 coming from third states, 30,000 from the EEA area. And I think we should be grateful for our tourism industry, for our services industry, for the construction industry. Had we not been able to attract those workers, it would have been very difficult, much more difficult to rebuild Zagreb. We invested, by the way, after the big earthquake, 4.2 billion euros for the reconstruction of Zagreb and the Banovina region, which came from somewhere. Somebody brought that money to Croatia. Of course, it was the efforts that we have made through the different EU funds available, whether it's the Recovery and Resilience Instrument, or whether it was the EU Solidarity Fund, or budget, or other sources. But it was a massive investment, which most of the citizens of Zagreb notice, or at least those who go to the Sisak region, which is very close. So my feeling is that the political issue and the narratives of some actors, whether are we changing the structure of the society. We had a case this weekend. There was a nun, a lady that reported somehow that she was injured, and then there was a huge fuss that there was a foreign worker, a migrant, screaming Allahu Akbar, trying to stab her, and there was a big row on the social networks. People were sort of trying to decapitate me as the one who was responsible for the foreigners being in Croatia. But then, as we understood, things were not completely clear, and then it turned out it was a self-inflicted wound, so it was a total lie. And when you are faced with such situations, what you need is a lot of soberness, patience, and basically resorting to the most important asset that any of us has in arguments of whatever issue, and that is truth. Maybe it's a bit late, but 3 days later, things have calmed down, and all of those who are even more in the mode of being against foreign workers in Croatia will say that we are lying, fabricating, and covering up certainly an attack by a migrant or a foreign worker of a Muslim confession. But that's life.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to move on, talk a little bit about more security and defense issues for Croatia and the region. So Croatia is introducing a military service for males over 18, I believe, from the beginning of 2026. So I just wanted to ask you, why did you decide to do that? Is that something that is more or less in response to what happened in 2022, Russia's invasion of Ukraine? Is it more about Croatia stepping up in terms of its contribution to European security overall? How does it fit in with Croatia's planning to contribute to the EU's defense and security initiatives, including SAFE program and so on? So just, a bit more about the context for that.
I would say it's a mixture of all the elements that you have put forward. First of all, it's not a obligatory military service in the sense that the Croats, a bit older ones, remember it or know it. It's a so-called basic military training lasting literally 8 weeks. So it's 2 months training. It's far away from an obligatory military service. So even in terminology, we said that we are introducing something new which didn't exist before. For those who are not keen on undergoing 2 months paid, by the way, of basic military service, they can serve for 3 months in the civil protection. Those who are afraid even of participating in civil protection, they can serve 4 months doing other things for the, let's say, general societal responsibility attached to a municipality, city, or wherever they live. So if you go for 2 months military, you get better paid. If you do 3 months civil service, you get less pay, civil protection service, less paid. If you do the civil obligation generally, basically you do it as a compensation for not taking this chance. Why are we doing it? Well, the Croats will remember, if you try to go back a little bit to the mindset of the political elite back in 2008. 2008 was a critical year for Croatia when it comes to the, at the time, obligatory military service. What we noticed at the time was the consciousness objection. Many people didn't want to serve anymore for various reasons, etc. So there was a tendency that many people were trying to basically evade this obligation that existed by that time. Then it coincided with an important visit to Croatia by the time US President George Bush, who was flying back from the Bucharest NATO summit, where a principled political decision was made that Croatia will join NATO, and formalities were, in terms of the accession treaty, completed, and we joined on the 2nd of April 2009. And all of a sudden, everybody thought, look, younger people do not really want to go anymore and serve. Plus, we have a collective security umbrella in the Article 5 of NATO. The best thing to do for the parliament and the government at the time was to pass a law suspending the obligation. So, if you now understand what Croatia did to itself, one, politically we attained the objective of joining NATO. The simplified reflection is if someone attacks us, America and all the allies are behind us. We don't need to be as prepared and as vigilant as we were in the Homeland War. Point number one. Second point was, with that, we should be living in a Europe after the Second World War that basically enjoyed peace. The next step was after NATO EU, and we should be focusing on social, economic development issues, and defense was somehow put aside. So, all of the Croats who are now 35 years of age, because those who were 18 in 2008 now are 35. The most familiarized weapon that they know very well is their mobile phone. I would say it's the only weapon they're acquainted with. The, I would say, voluntary military service that is, of course, that remained available is quantité négligeable in terms of how many people do that exercise. The professional military is around 15,000 servicemen. That's not enough. In the globally changed security circumstances, that is not enough. And I think that we have come to face a reality. A reality is that Europe is not anymore taken for granted, or NATO is not taken for granted in terms of security. We have a waging aggression on the European soil, Russia against Ukraine for almost 4 years. If we are now not aware that this is not the Europe that we thought back in 2008 was going to be normal, then when would we be? So what we did was two things. One, over the last 10 years, we had a very strong transition from Eastern and more or less outdated military technology that possessed Croatian military and Croatian army, and buying more Western technology. So we did a massive investments, we changed all the laws, and we put the soldier in the center, and what we have now can't be compared with the days when I started as a prime minister. So the next step was basically to have wider population in Croatia who is at least familiar with the basic military training, and that's the whole logic. It's changed circumstances, which nobody can deny. So we had to do it. Many other countries are doing. The French are doing it. We are going to Paris on Monday. You just saw that Danish are introducing 11 months. 11 months in Denmark, where who would have thought that any crisis would have been available. Plus, we have our neighborhood, which is not yet, some of them neither in the EU nor in NATO, and we have to be aware of possible instability across the continent. So these are the main reasons. But the key thing is that the globally changed atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yeah, neighborhood. Maybe two quick questions just to finish, because I know we're running out of time now. But in terms of the neighborhood and Croatia's attitude towards further EU enlargement, especially for the Western Balkans, do you see that as a realistic prospect by 2030 that one of your neighbors might join, or maybe two? How do you see it, and what's Croatia doing to try and make that happen?
Well, we are still the latest member of the European Union. When we joined, we were the 28th member. Now we are the 27th because of the fact that the UK unfortunately left the club. Unlike the mandate of the Juncker Commission, unlike the first von der Leyen Commission, where I didn't really sense in the center of Brussels politics the genuine political will to attain actual physical enlargement of any candidate country, this time I have to admit the atmosphere is slightly different. I think that this time we can feel that there is a political will in the EU executive, even in majority of the member states, even the big ones, that maybe it's time after Croatia, which joined on the 1st of July 2013, that someone else should join. So we have two groups. We have Ukraine and Moldova, former neighborhood policy countries, and the countries of the Southeast Europe or Western Balkans, where currently Montenegro is the most advanced country to be a front runner in the accession process. I think if they manage to technically be ready, that politically we might have some decision before 2030 on some of the countries. This is a new moment. However, we should bear in mind that the fourth Copenhagen criteria, meaning the old Copenhagen from 1993, which is the absorption capacity of the European Union, which is very, very superficially mentioned for the moment, and that is the capacity of the European Union to integrate new members, it will surface. And this basically means two things. We rarely speak about it in Croatia. One is the budgetary implications, and second, it's the implications when it comes to the decision-making process. This debate, even when we were joining, somehow it wasn't visible at all in the Croatian public. But what are the underlying issues? The European budget is being basically filled almost 80% by 10 richest countries of the European Union. Everybody else contributes for around 20%. So those who are rich, or the founders, or very big or strong economies, they're not necessarily hilariously excited with smaller countries who contribute very little, coming around the table and basically deciding on the major policy on equal footing, especially when it comes to some dossiers which are decided by unanimity. For those who are older followers of the European Union, you will remember that about 20 years ago, the 5 big countries basically decided to give up the second commissioner. Who remembers the times when Germany had 2 commissioners? Or Italy? Or France? You don't. It was so long ago that we forgot. So from their perspective, they have already sacrificed for the enlargement towards the East, for the executive to function, their stronger position in the EU executive, for one. And they have the same number of strong, influential people as the countries who contribute very little. So decision-making process and the budgetary implications are in the heart of the future decisions on enlargement. Plus, some of the countries require either a referendum on any new enlargement, or, I'm referring to France, I was posted to France in Paris when they altered their constitution for the future enlargements, and Croatia passed through a needle's eye because we lobbied intensely that Croatia is exempt from that requirement. So for any new enlargement, as the thing stands now, according to the French constitution, the new enlargement would entail a referendum on this country being accepted by the French people, or the 3/5 of the vote of the Congress. And Congress is the Assemblée Nationale and the Senate meeting in Versailles very rarely, deciding on an enlargement, which politically, for me who knows a little bit about the French politics, good luck. Whoever tries, good luck, especially today. It gets more complicated as the time passes.
Okay, I think we're out of time, and I know you have a really busy schedule today, but maybe I can just ask you a 20-second answer on the question, because I know you're going to see President Macron and you'll see Chancellor Merz in coming weeks. So how do you see the balance between the need to assert European sovereignty and at the same time maintain transatlantic alliance? How crucial is that? And just 30 seconds, if you can.
Oof. 30 seconds for such a simple
it's
question.
Unfair, very unfair, but
I don't know. I guess we'll try to be pragmatic, but I have to admit that there are three implications of the America First policy. One, on the general multilateralism, meaning that the US withdrew from many multilateral arrangements, conventions, or even organizations. Second is the tariff policy that has altered completely the global trade, especially the WTO is being sidelined. And third, the biggest security issue, with all the efforts to contribute to peace, how the Russian aggression on Ukraine ends will basically determine the future of international law, global governance, and it will send signals to many bullies around the world to basically take away somebody else's territory, and others will just watch.
Well, thank you very much.
More than 20 seconds.
Yeah, that was great. So, yeah, thanks very much indeed, Prime Minister. We really appreciate that you took the time out from your very busy day today and that you had this conversation, which I think the audience appreciates very much. So thank you very much indeed.